Commander Nari pressed her hand against the deep cut on her side, feeling warm blood seep through her fingers. The bridge of her flagship shook violently as another explosion rocked the hull. Metal groaned and sparked around her as the lights flickered on and off. Her crew worked frantically at their stations, their faces pale with terror. The Devourers had finally found them. These weren't ordinary enemies. The Devourers were massive mechanical creatures that moved through space like hungry sharks. They were made of living metal that could reshape itself, and they had one terrifying purpose: to eat entire star systems. They would strip planets bare, devour the stars themselves, and leave nothing but empty darkness behind. Nari had seen the reports from other sectors. Entire civilizations wiped out in days. Billions of lives snuffed out like candles. The Devourers didn't just kill, they consumed everything, turning matter into fuel for their endless hunger. Now, they were here, in the Outer Rim territories, and her fleet was being torn apart like paper. Commander. Her tactical officer, a young Zalani with silver skin, looked up from his console with wide, frightened eyes. The Harmony's light just took a direct hit. She's gone. Through the main viewport, Nari watched in horror as her sister's ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The explosion was almost beautiful, like a deadly firework against the black of space. But she knew that over 8,000 souls had just died in that flash. "How many ships have we lost?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. 17. "Confirmed destroyed, Commander. 23 more heavily damaged. The Devourers have us surrounded on 3 sides. Nari looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed the enemy positions, massive ships that looked more like mechanical beasts than spacecraft. They moved with predatory grace, circling her fleet like wolves around wounded prey. Each Devourer's ship was easily 3 times the size of her largest vessel. "Send the emergency beacon," she gasped, wincing as pain shot through her wounded side. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Tell every civilization in the galaxy that the Outer Rim is under attack." Her communications officer, a nervous Quellen, whose normally brown fur had turned white with stress, nodded quickly. His 6-fingered hands danced across the controls as he sent out the desperate message. "Signal sent, Commander. We're telling them that unless help comes soon, the Outer Rim colonies are lost. All of them." Nari knew what that meant. The Outer Rim was home to over 40 billion people across hundreds of worlds. If the Devourers broke through here, they would have a clear path to the core systems. The entire galaxy could fall. Another explosion shook the ship, this one closer. Nari grabbed onto her command chair to keep from falling. A shower of sparks rained down from a damaged console, and she could smell burning electronics in the air. "Commander, we need to retreat," her first officer urged. "Can't fight them. No one can." The Devourers had proven that already. They had destroyed the mighty Altarian defense fleet in less than an hour. The Centauri Alliance, with all their advanced technology, had lasted only 3 days. Even the proud warrior clans of Rigel, who had never known defeat, had been crushed completely. "Ma'am," the communications officer's voice cracked with excitement. "We're getting responses to our distress call." Nari asked, hope flickering. "In her chest," the Vegan Republic says. "They're too far away to help in time. The Crystal Confederacy is already evacuating their border worlds. The hegemony, ... double quotes." He paused, his ears drooping. "The hegemony says they're pulling back all their forces to defend their core systems." Nara's hope died. It was what she had expected, but it still hurt to have it confirmed. Everyone was running. Everyone was saving themselves. "Wait," the communications officer said suddenly, his ears perking up. "There's one more response coming in. It's from Sol 3. Sol 3. Nari repeated, confused. "That's in the Terran system, isn't it?" "Yes, Commander. The humans." Nari stared at him in disbelief. Humans. The primitive little mammals who had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. They were so backward that most civilizations still considered them a curiosity rather than a real spacefaring species. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes, Commander." "The signal? is definitely coming from Earth. Should I put it through? Nari almost laughed. What could humans possibly do against the Devourers? Their ships were tiny, their weapons primitive. They still used chemical rockets for some of their space travel. Confederation had been monitoring them for years, more out of scientific interest than any real concern. Put it through, she said. Maybe they could at least warn the humans to run. The communications officer nodded and opened the channel. A human voice came through the speakers, speaking in the common galactic language, but with that strange accent humans had. This is Earth. Responding to your distress call, we've received your message about the Devourer attack on the Outer Rim. This is Commander Nari of the Confederation Fleet, she replied. Human vessel, you need to evacuate your system immediately. We know what they are? The human voice interrupted calmly. We've been watching this situation develop. Help is on the way. Nari blinked in confusion. Help? What kind of help can you possibly estimated arrival time is 6 hours? We suggest you retreat to a safe distance and try to stay hidden until we get there. Also, please tell the Metal Boys we said hello. The channel closed, leaving Nari staring at the communications console in shock. Metal Boys? What did that even mean? Commander, her tactical officer, called out urgently. The Devourers are moving. They're preparing for another attack run. Ali looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships were indeed repositioning, their massive forms gliding through space. With deadly purpose, she could see the energy build up in their main weapons, the dreaded consumption beams that could tear apart entire ships in seconds. All ships, evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. Commander, what about the humans? The communications officer asked. They said help was coming. Nari looked at him sadly. I'm sure they meant well, but there's nothing they can do. We can't wait here for 6 hours just to watch brave human pilots die uselessly. But even as she gave the order to retreat, she couldn't shake the humans' calm confidence. There had been something in that voice, not fear or desperation, but something else? Something that almost sounded like ... amusement? As her fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Nari found herself wondering what the humans knew that she didn't, and why they had sounded so sure that help was actually coming. The Devourers fired their consumption beams, and Nari's fleet scattered into hyperspace, leaving the Outer Rim to its fate. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she kept hearing that human voice saying, help is on the way. She just hoped they knew what they were getting into. 6 hours felt like 6 years. Commander Nari and her surviving ships had found shelter behind the broken remains of what used to be Kepler 442c's moon. The Devourers had shattered it during their first attack, turning it into a field of floating rocks and debris. It wasn't much cover, but it was better than sitting in open space. Nari sat in her command chair, bandages wrapped around her wounded side, staring at the long-range sensors. Her crew worked quietly at their stations, their faces grim. They all knew they were probably going to die here. The distress calls they had sent out had brought no real help, just polite responses, saying other civilizations were too busy saving themselves. Commander, her sensor operator called out softly, I'm picking up hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming. Nari straightened up. The Devourers? No, ma'am. The energy patterns are different. These are jump signatures I've never seen before. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the empty space where her sensors were detecting the incoming ships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality seemed to tear open like fabric being ripped apart. The first ship emerged from hyperspace in a flash of brilliant light. It was huge, easily 1 kilometer long and bristling with weapons that didn't match anything in the Confederation. Database? Its hull was a dark gray color that seemed to absorb light, and it moved with the smooth confidence of a predator. Then another ship appeared, and another, and another. By the void, whispered her tactical officer, his silver skin turning pale. How many are there? The ships kept coming, dozens of them, then hundreds. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, each one taking its assigned position with military precision. Nari had never seen anything like it. Even the great battle fleets of the core worlds didn't move with this kind of coordination. "Commander," her communications officer said, his voice shaking, These are human ships. It's impossible." Nari breathed. "Our intelligence reports said humans had maybe 50 interstellar vessels total. Small ones. Research ships and cargo haulers mostly. But the evidence was right there on her screens." Ship after ship continued to emerge from hyperspace, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything the humans were supposed to have. Some of them looked like mobile fortresses. Others resembled floating cities with massive weapon arrays sticking out at all angles. "Ma'am," her sensor operator called out, his voice filled with awe, "I'm reading over 300 vessels now, and they're still coming." Nari stared at the tactical display in shock. Each red dot represented a human ship, and there were so many dots now that they looked like a swarm of angry insects. How was this possible? How had a species that barely had warp drive managed to build a fleet this massive? "Commander, the lead ship is hailing us," the communications officer reported. The largest vessel in the human fleet was a monster that dwarfed even the biggest Confederation dreadnoughts. According to the ship's identification signal, it was called the UESN Revenge. The name alone made Nari's skin crawl. "Put them through," she ordered. The view screen flickered. And suddenly, Nari was looking at a human woman in a crisp military uniform. She appeared to be middle-aged, with short black hair streaked with gray and intelligent dark eyes. Her uniform bore the insignia of an admiral, and her name tag read Choi. What struck Nari most was the woman's expression. She was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile a predator might wear when it spotted easy prey. "Commander Nari, I presume?" Admiral Choi said in perfect galactic standard. "Sorry, we're a bit late to the party. Traffic was absolutely murder getting here." There was something casual about the way she said it that made Nari's survival instincts scream warnings. This human was dangerous. Very dangerous. "Admiral Choi," Nari managed, trying to keep her voice steady. "I must admit, I'm surprised to see you here. Our intelligence suggested that Earth's military capabilities were quite limited." Admiral Choi's smile widened, and somehow that made it even more unsettling. "Your intelligence was probably right. About our public fleet anyway. This is something else entirely. I don't understand. We've been watching your little devourer problem for quite some time now," Choi continued conversationally. "Fascinating creatures, really. It's the way they convert matter directly into energy. The self-repairing hulls. The hive mind coordination. We've learned a lot from studying them." Studying them? How could humans have been studying the devourers? The mechanical monsters had never attacked human space. They had been too busy conquering everyone else. "Admiral," Nari said urgently, "I don't think you understand what you're facing here. The Devourers aren't just another enemy fleet. They've conquered 73 different civilizations. They destroyed the Altarian Defense Force. They wiped out the Centauri Alliance. These things are unstoppable. 73 civilizations." Admiral Choi repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, we know. You've been keeping very careful records." The way she said it sent chills down Nara's spine. There was something cold and calculating in the human's voice, like she was discussing statistics rather than the deaths of billions of beings. "You know?" Nari asked. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because we've been tracking every single attack," Choi replied matter-of-factly. "Every ship they've destroyed. Every world they've consumed. Every life they've taken. They're very detailed. Files on their capabilities. But why? Why would Earth be monitoring the Devourers so closely?" Admiral Choi's smile disappeared for a moment, replaced by an expression of cold fury that made Nari want to hide under her command console. "Because 15 years ago, they made a mistake," Choi said quietly. "A very big mistake. They sent a scouting force toward our solar system. Just 3 ships, really. Probably thought we'd be easy pickings." "Ari!" Felt her blood turn to ice. "What happened?" "We destroyed them," Choi said simply. "Completely. But not before we captured one of their ships intact. And not before they killed some very important people." The human admiral's smile returned, but now it was sharp as a blade and twice as deadly. "See, Commander Nari, humans have a particular trait that makes us different from most species in the galaxy. When someone hurts us, we don't just get angry. We don't just fight back. We remember. And we plan. Behind Admiral Choi, Nari could see other humans moving around the bridge of the massive ship. They all had the same calm, professional demeanor. They looked like people who knew exactly what they were doing and were completely confident in their ability to do it. What kind of plan? Nari found herself asking, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. The kind that takes 15 years to put together properly, Choi replied. The kind that requires strip mining 3 moons and converting an entire asteroid belt into raw materials. The kind that involves building a fleet specifically designed to hunt down and destroy every single devourer in the galaxy. Nari stared at the human admiral in shock. You've been preparing for war for 15 years. Not war, Commander. Revenge. There's a difference. Choi's expression grew thoughtful. War is what you do when you want to win. Revenge is what you do when you want to make sure your enemy never threatens anyone ever again. Tactical display. Updated, showing the full extent of the human fleet. There were over 400 ships now, ranging from sleek destroyers to massive dreadnoughts. Some of them looked like nothing Nari had ever seen before. Weird, angular vessels that seemed to bend light around them. This is impossible, Nari whispered. No one could build a fleet this size in secret. Secret? Admiral Choi laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused. Oh, Commander, this wasn't secret at all. We've been building these ships in full view of anyone who cared to look. The problem is, nobody thought humans were worth watching. That was true, Nari realized. The Confederation had monitoring stations throughout human space, but they were mostly scientific outposts, studying human culture and development. No one had been looking for military preparations because no one thought humans were capable of serious military preparations. You used our own prejudices against us, Nari said, understanding dawning. Exactly. Everyone in the galaxy thinks humans are primitive and harmless. So when we started building massive industrial complexes on the far side of Jupiter, nobody paid attention. When we began mining operations in the Kuiper Belt, it was just those cute little humans playing with rocks. When we established construction facilities in the Oort cloud, well, those were obviously just research stations. Admiral Choi gestured toward the view screen where the human fleet continued to deploy in perfect formation. The beautiful thing about being underestimated, Commander, is that no one bothers to look closely at what you're actually doing. Nari felt a chill of recognition. You've been planning this from the beginning. From the moment the first devourer entered our solar system, Choi confirmed. We knew they'd be back eventually. We knew that when they came, they'd bring friends. So we prepared accordingly. But the resources, the time, the coordination required. Humans are very good at long-term projects when we're properly motivated, Admiral Choi said. And nothing motivates humans quite like the knowledge that something out there wants to eat our children. The communication channel remained open, but Admiral Choi seemed to be listening to something happening on her own bridge. After a moment, she turned back to face Nari. Well, Commander, it looks like our old friends are finally ready to come out and play. The Devourers have detected our arrival, and they're moving to intercept. Nari's heart sank. The human fleet might be impressive, but the Devourers had never lost a battle, ever. Admiral, please, she said desperately. You don't understand what those things can do. Their consumption beams can tear apart entire ships. Their hulls regenerate faster than you can damage them. They coordinate their attacks perfectly. You need to retreat while you still can. Admiral Choi's smile returned, wider and more predatory than ever. Commander, she said softly, I think you're the one who doesn't understand. We didn't come here to fight the Devourers. Then why are you here? We came here to collect them. The Devourers moved like a school of mechanical sharks, sensing blood in the water. 17 massive ships arranged themselves in their signature sphere formation, a battle tactic that had never failed them. They had used this exact pattern to destroy the proud fleets of the Rigel warriors, to crush the advanced armadas of the Vegan Republic, and to tear apart every other military force foolish enough to stand against them, Commander. Nari watched from behind the shattered moon, her heart pounding as she saw the enemy ships positioning themselves around the human fleet. The sphere formation. was brilliant in its simplicity. It prevented any chance of escape while allowing the devourers to concentrate their firepower from all directions. No ship caught in the center of that sphere had ever survived. "They're forming the Death Sphere," her tactical officer whispered, his voice filled with dread. "The humans are trapped." The devourer ships were truly terrifying to behold. Each one was over 2 kilometers long, shaped like a massive mechanical sea creature with writhing metal tentacles that could reach out and tear apart enemy vessels. Their hulls were made of some kind of living metal that could reshape itself, heal damage instantly, and adapt to any weapon fired at it. Rows of glowing red eyes dotted their surfaces, giving them an almost organic appearance, despite being entirely mechanical. As the sphere closed around the human fleet, Nari expected to see panic. She expected desperate maneuvers, frantic communications, ships breaking formation to try to escape. Instead, something happened that she had never seen in any battle before. The humans laughed. It started with Admiral Choi's ship, the massive USN Revenge. A sound came across the communication channels, deep, rich laughter that seemed genuinely amused. Then another human ship joined in, then another. Within seconds, the entire human fleet was broadcasting laughter across every frequency. It wasn't nervous laughter or the kind of desperate humor people sometimes used when facing death. This was the laughter of people who knew something funny that nobody else understood. It was the laughter of people who had just heard the perfect punchline to a joke that had been building up for 15 years. "What are they doing?" NRS Communications officer asked, his ears twitching in confusion.
Have they lost their minds?"
The laughter continued, echoing through space in a way that made Nari's skin crawl. There was something deeply unsettling about hundreds of warships broadcasting amusement while surrounded by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. "Commander," her sensor operator called out urgently, "the devourers are charging their consumption beams. Energy readings are off the charts." Nari opened a channel to the human fleet. "Admiral Choi, they're preparing to fire their primary weapons. You need to break formation immediately. Those beams can tear apart anything in their path."
"Admiral?"
Choi's voice came back across the communication channel, still tinged with amusement. "Oh, we know all about their consumption beams, Commander. We've been studying them for quite some time." Another human voice joined the conversation, this one from a ship called the USN Vindictive. "This is Admiral Jiho Kim, Commander Nari. We appreciate your concern. But we've actually been reverse engineering that particular weapon system for about 12 years now." "Reverse engineering?" Nari repeated in shock. "How could you possibly want to see our version?" Admiral Kim interrupted. And there was something in his voice that made Neris' blood run cold. The human ship called Vindictive began to glow. Energy. Readings that made Neris' sensors scream in protest built up along its hull. But instead of pointing their weapons at the devourers, the humans aimed at empty space. "What are they doing?" Nari's tactical officer asked. "There's nothing there to shoot at." The human ship fired. The weapon that emerged from the Vindictive wasn't like anything Nari had ever seen. It looked like a beam of pure darkness that seemed to eat light itself. Where it struck empty space, reality simply ... broke. A hole opened in the fabric of space-time itself. It started small, maybe a few meters across, but it grew rapidly until it was large enough for a battleship to fly through. Through the opening, Nari could see stars she didn't recognize, a different part of the galaxy entirely. "What in the void is that?" she whispered. That Admiral Choi's voice came cheerfully across the communication channel as a artificial wormhole. "We figured out how to make them about 8 years ago. It's very handy for moving large numbers of ships across galactic distances." Through the tear in space, new ships began to emerge. But these weren't just more of the same vessels Nari had already seen. These were monsters. The first ship to come through the wormhole was icily 5 kilometers long, larger than some space stations. Its hull was covered in weapon arrays that made it look like a floating fortress. Behind it came another ship, then another, then dozens more. "Meet the Terran Vengeance Fleet," Admiral Choi announced, her voice filled with pride. "We've been building in the Andromeda staging area for the past 10 years. Had to put them somewhere the devourers wouldn't accidentally stumble across them." More wormholes opened across the battlefield, hundreds of them. Thousands of additional human ships poured through mobile factories the size of small moons. Weapon platforms that bristled with more guns than entire fleets. Vessels so large they seemed to blot out the stars. This is impossible, Nari breathed. No one could build this many ships. The resources alone would require stripping entire star systems. Funny story about that. Admiral Kim's voice came across the channel. Turns out humans are really good at large-scale industrial projects, when we put our minds to it. We may have borrowed a few asteroid belts and gas giants from uninhabited systems. Hope nobody minds. The Devourers, apparently deciding they had seen enough, opened fire. The lead Devourer ship unleashed its consumption beam, a weapon that had never failed to destroy anything it hit. The beam was a lance of pure energy that could tear through the strongest armor, vaporize entire hulls, consume the very atoms of its target. It struck the human ship directly and simply stopped. The consumption beam hit the human vessel's hull and just disappeared. It didn't bounce off or get absorbed. Slowly, it vanished completely, as if it had never existed. For a moment, nobody moved. Even the Devourers seemed stunned by what had just happened. Then the human ship fired back. The return beam was the same type of energy as the Devourer's consumption beam, but somehow more intense, struck the Devourer's ship with 3 times. The power of the original attack, mechanical monster's living metal hull, which had never taken damage from any weapon, began to dissolve like ice in a furnace. How? Nari gasped. Admiral Choi's voice had lost all traces of humor. When she spoke now, her words were cold as the space between stars. 15 years ago, the Devourers made a mistake. They attacked our research station on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. It was a small facility, only about 300 people. Scientists mostly. People studying quantum physics and exotic matter. More human ships were firing now, each one using weapons that seemed to be improved versions of Devourer technology. The mechanical predators that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were taking damage for the first time in their existence. The Devourers killed almost everyone on that station, Admiral Choi continued. Almost everyone. But they left one person, alive. Dr. Yuna Park, our leading expert in energy manipulation and matter conversion. Nari watched in amazement as human ships began to systematically tear apart the Devourer formation. The mechanical monsters tried to adapt, tried to heal their wounds, but the human weapons were somehow preventing their regeneration. Dr. Park spent the next 14 years in our most secret research facility, Admiral Choi said. She had unlimited funding, unlimited resources, and one very simple directive from the Earth government. Make them pay. The Devourer's ship tried to retreat, but human vessels surrounded it immediately. They didn't destroy it outright. Instead, they seemed to be hurting it, forcing it into a specific position. Dr. Park didn't just figure out how the consumption beam works, Admiral Choi explained. She improved it, made it more efficient, more powerful. And most importantly, she learned how to reverse it. Reverse it? Nari asked. The consumption. Beam converts matter into energy. Dr. Park's version converts energy back into matter specifically, to a type of matter that cancels out the Devourer's regenerative abilities. One shot from our weapons, and their living metal becomes as fragile as glass. More Devourer ships were falling now, the mechanical monsters that had conquered 73. Civilizations were being systematically dismantled by weapons that turned their own technology against them. But that's not the best part, Admiral Kim's voice added with dark satisfaction. The really beautiful thing is that Dr. Park didn't just want to build better weapons. She wanted to make sure we could capture them alive. Capture them? Nari repeated in horror. Oh yes, Admiral Choi confirmed. You see, Commander, humans have spent 15 years thinking about what the Devourers did to our people. 15 years planning exactly how we were going to pay them back, and we decided that simply destroying them would be too quick, too merciful. The last Devourer ship tried to escape, but found itself completely surrounded by human vessels. Beams of energy lanced out, not to destroy but to disable. The mechanical monster's weapons went offline. Its engines shut down. Its ability to heal itself vanished. We're going to take every single one of them home with us, Admiral Choi said cheerfully. "We have some questions we'd like to ask. About who sent them. About where they came from.
About
Why they thought Earth would be an easy target." The Devourer ship, now helpless, was being surrounded by strange human vessels that looked more like mobile laboratories than warships. And we have all the time in the world to get our answers. What Commander Nari witnessed next would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. She had expected a battle, explosions, destruction, ships being blown apart in brilliant flashes of light. Instead, she watched something far more terrifying, a perfectly orchestrated dissection of the most feared predators in the galaxy. The humans moved with the calm precision of surgeons. Their ships didn't swarm the Devourers in chaotic attacks. Instead, they positioned themselves around each mechanical monster with mathematical accuracy, each vessel taking a specific position, as if following a carefully rehearsed plan. Target the propulsion systems first. Admiral Choi's voice came across the communication channels, speaking to her fleet with the casual tone of someone giving directions to a grocery store. "Remember, we want them intact and functional." Immobile, Nari watched in fascination as human weapons fired with pinpoint accuracy. The beams weren't the massive, overwhelming blasts she expected from warships. These were surgical strikes, thin, focused energy beams that sliced through specific parts of the Devourer hulls like a hot knife through butter. The first target was always the engines. The humans had clearly studied Devourer ship designs extensively because they knew exactly where to hit. Each Devourer ship had its propulsion systems disabled within seconds, leaving the massive mechanical predators floating helplessly in space. Now, the weapons, Admiral Choi continued, her voice remaining eerily calm. "Be careful with the consumption beam generators. We want those systems intact for study." More precise strikes followed. The humans systematically disabled every weapon on every Devourer ship, but they did it in a way that preserved the technology rather than destroying it. It was like watching a master craftsman carefully disassemble a complex machine, keeping every part for later examination. "This is incredible," whispered Nara's science officer, an elderly hegemony scholar who had spent his entire life studying. "Warfare, Commander. They're not fighting, they're. The science officer was right. This wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. The humans weren't trying to win quickly or efficiently. They were systematically collecting everything: technology, data, even what appeared to be biological samples from the mechanical creatures. "Look at their approach," the science officer continued, his voice filled with academic fascination despite the horror of what they were witnessing. "They've disabled propulsion first to prevent escape, then weapons to eliminate threats. But they're leaving life support systems completely intact. The Devourers are still alive and conscious. The humans want them aware of what's happening." That realization sent chills down Nari's spine. The Devourers, despite being mechanical, did have a form of consciousness. They were experiencing every moment of their capture, aware that they were completely helpless for the first time in their existence. As the humans worked, Nari noticed strange new ships approaching the disabled Devourers. These vessels looked nothing like the warships that had fought the battle. They were sleek, white, and covered in sophisticated sensor arrays. They looked more like mobile laboratories than military craft. "Science vessels," her tactical officer observed. "They're bringing in their research ships." Science ships deployed something that made Neris's blood run cold. Thousands of small, spider-like robots began pouring out of the human vessels. Each robot was about the size of a person, with multiple mechanical arms ending in various tools: cutters, scanners, these mechanical spiders. These mechanical spiders swarmed over the Devourer hulls like insects on a carcass. But they weren't trying to destroy anything. Instead, they were methodically cutting small holes in the armor, inserting scanning equipment, taking tiny samples of the living metal that made up the Devourer ships. "They're performing live dissection," Narascience officer breathed in amazement. "They're studying these creatures while they're still conscious and functional." Some of the mechanical spiders carried larger devices that they attached to various points on the Devourer hulls. These devices looked like collars or restraints, but they were clearly much more sophisticated. "What are those things?" Nari asked. Opening a channel to Admiral Choi, the human admiral's image appeared on the view screen, and she was smiling again. But now Nari understood that Admiral Choi's smiles were never good news for anyone on the receiving end. Those are control interfaces, Choi explained cheerfully. Very clever little devices designed by our cybernetics department. They tap directly into the devourer's nervous system, or whatever passes for a nervous system in a mechanical organism. Control interfaces? Nari repeated, not liking where this was going. Think of them as remote controls, Admiral Choi said. Once we install them, we can override the devourer's motor functions, make them move where we want, when we want. Very useful for transportation purposes. The largest devourer ship, a 5-kilometer monster that Nari recognized from intelligence, reports as the same vessel that had consumed the Centauri colonies was now completely surrounded by human ships. The mechanical spiders had covered its entire hull, and the control collars were being installed at key points along its massive frame. You're not going to destroy them, Nari realized. Destroy them? Admiral Choi looked genuinely surprised by the suggestion. Commander, why would we destroy the galaxy's most advanced military technology? These ships represent thousands of years of development. The energy conversion systems alone are worth more than the entire gross domestic product of most civilizations. They're dangerous. They're killers, Admiral Choi corrected. Very sophisticated, very deadly tools that someone has been pointing at innocent civilizations for decades. We want to know who that someone is. A new voice joined the conversation, another human admiral speaking from a ship called the UESN Inquisitor. Commander Nari, this is Admiral Taiho Park. We're not here to blow up your nightmare. We're here to take it home and ask it some very pointed questions. Questions? Nari asked, though she was beginning to understand the direction this was heading. Like who built them? Admiral Park continued. Who programmed them? Who decided that the devourers should expand in this particular direction at this particular time? Most importantly, who told them that human space would be an easy target? Admiral Choi's smile had disappeared again, replaced by that cold, calculating expression that made Nari want to hide. You see, Commander, the devourers didn't just randomly stumble across our solar system 15 years ago. Someone sent them there. Someone who knew exactly where to find us and exactly how to get there. How can you be sure? Because the devourers don't explore, Admiral Park explained. They don't scout. They don't investigate new territories. According to our research, they only attack targets they've been specifically directed to attack. Someone gave them our coordinates. The implications of that statement hit Nari like a physical blow. Someone in the galaxy had deliberately sent the devourers toward Earth. Someone had tried to use these botanical monsters as a weapon against humanity. We've spent 15 years building this fleet, Admiral Choi continued. 15 years developing new technologies, new weapons, new ways to capture and control the devourers. But the real purpose of this operation isn't to stop them from attacking other civilizations, though. That's certainly a nice side benefit. Then what is the purpose? Admiral Choi's smile returned, and it was more terrifying than any weapon Nari had ever seen. The purpose, Commander, is to find out who sent them after us, and then to have a very long, very detailed conversation with that person about why they thought targeting humanity was a good idea. The massive devourer dreadnought was now being towed away by human ships, its hull covered in control collars and monitoring devices. The mechanical monster that had destroyed entire civilizations was now as helpless as a fish in a net. These aren't prisoners of war, Commander, Admiral Choi explained. Prisoners of war have rights. These are research subjects, and our research department has some very creative people working for it. People who lost friends and family on Europa. People who have spent 15 years thinking about this moment. What are you going to do to them? We're going to take them apart, Admiral Park answered bluntly. Every circuit, every program, every memory core. We're going to learn everything there is to know about how they work, where they came from, and who's been controlling them. Admiral Choi nodded approvingly. Dr. Minho Sung, our Chief of Xenological Justice, has developed some particularly innovative interrogation techniques. He's very good at extracting information from unwilling subjects. he's also very motivated. He lost his wife and 2 children when the Devourers attacked Europa. Nari watched as more Devourer ships were fitted with control collars and prepared for transport. The most feared predators in the galaxy were being collected like specimens for a laboratory, and once we have our answers, Admiral Choi concluded, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. We're going to pay a visit to whoever thought humanity would be easy prey. We're going to show them exactly what happens when you point a loaded weapon at Earth. The human fleet was already preparing to leave their captured prizes in tow. But Nari had the distinct feeling that this wasn't the end of anything. It was just the beginning. 3 days had passed since the impossible battle. Commander Nari still couldn't quite believe what she had witnessed. The Devourers, the unstoppable, mechanical predators that had terrorized the galaxy for decades, had been defeated in a matter of hours. Not just defeated, but captured, studied, and hauled away like cargo. Now she found herself aboard the human flagship, the USN Revenge, sitting in what the humans called an observation lounge. The room was surprisingly comfortable, with soft lighting and furniture that seemed designed for relaxation rather than military efficiency. But what drew her attention were the massive displays covering every wall, showing real-time information from across the entire galaxy. Admiral Choi sat across from her, pouring tea from an elegant ceramic pot as if they were old friends having a casual chat. The human woman seemed completely at ease, no longer wearing the predatory smile that had made Nari's survival instincts scream.
Oh.
Now she just looked ... tired, and maybe a little sad. I apologize for the delay in getting you aboard, Admiral Choi said, handing Nari a delicate cup filled with steaming liquid. We've been rather busy with cleanup operations. Nari accepted the tea gratefully. Her own ship's food processors had been damaged in the initial attack, and she hadn't had a proper meal in days. The tea was surprisingly good, some kind of earth blend that tasted like flowers and honey. Cleanup operations? She asked. Admiral Choi gestured toward the wall displays. Take a look. Nari turned to study the screens more carefully. What she saw made her nearly drop her cup. The display showed a real-time tactical map of known space, with thousands of tiny dots, representing ships and fleet movements. Most of the dots were colored blue, human forces apparently. Those are all your ships? Nari asked in disbelief. Our ships are currently deployed to every system where we've detected Devourer activity, Admiral Choi confirmed. We're conducting what you might call a comprehensive cleaning operation. The scale of it was mind-boggling. Human fleets were scattered across hundreds of star systems, each one apparently large enough to handle whatever Devourer forces they encountered. Nari had assumed that the massive fleet she'd witnessed was humanity's entire military capability. She had been very wrong. How many ships do you have? She asked weakly. Admiral Choi smiled, but this time it was genuinely warm rather than threatening. That's classified, I'm afraid. But I can tell you that what you saw 3 days ago was just Battle Group 7. We have 43 other battle groups currently deployed across the galaxy. Nari's cup began to shake in her hands. 43 other fleets, each one as large as the massive Armada that had destroyed the Devourers. The implications were staggering. Your fleet alone is larger than our entire Confederation Navy, she managed to say. This fleet? Admiral Choi chuckled, taking a sip of her own tea. Commander, you're still thinking too small. This isn't just about ships. She stood up and walked over to one of the displays, touching the screen to bring up different information. Now, instead of showing ship movements, the display showed industrial data mining operations, construction facilities, resource allocation, charts. For the past 15 years, while the rest of the galaxy was trying to figure out how to fight the Devourers or where to hide from them, humanity was doing something else entirely, Admiral Choi explained. We were rebuilding our entire civilization around a single purpose. What purpose? Revenge, Admiral Choi said simply. Not just against the Devourers themselves, but against whoever sent them after us. We knew they'd be back eventually, and we knew they wouldn't come alone, so we prepared accordingly. Nari studied the industrial data on the screens. The numbers were almost incomprehensible. asteroid mining operations that had stripped entire belts down to nothing, gas giant processing facilities that had converted whole planets into raw materials, construction yards that covered areas larger than most space stations. You strip-mined your own solar system, she realized. Jupiter's moons, Saturn's rings, the asteroid belt, most of the Kuiper Belt objects, Admiral Choi confirmed cheerfully. Amazing what you can accomplish when you have unlimited motivation and no environmental protection laws in space. The resources, the coordination. The sheer scale of it. Humans are very good at large projects when we put our minds to it, Admiral Choi said. We built the pyramids with nothing but rope and muscle power. We connected the entire planet. With communication networks, we put people on our moon using computers less powerful than a modern calculator. When we decide to do something, we don't mess around. Another display showed what appeared to be reconstruction efforts. Human ships were arriving at worlds that had been stripped bare by the Devourers, beginning what looked like massive terraforming and rebuilding operations. What are you doing to those planets? Nari asked. Fixing them, Admiral Choi replied. Every world the Devourers consumed, every civilization they destroyed, every ecosystem they stripped bare, we're putting it all back. That's impossible. Some of those worlds have been dead for decades. Civilizations that lived there are gone. People are gone, yes, Admiral Choi agreed sadly. Can't bring back the dead. But we can rebuild their worlds. We can restore their ecosystems. We can make sure their civilizations are remembered. She touched the screen again, bringing up detailed plans for planetary reconstruction. The scope was breathtaking and entire. Worlds being rebuilt from scratch, atmospheres being restored, ecosystems being recreated from genetic samples. Why? Nari asked. Why would you do all this? It would take centuries. It's maybe thousands of years. Admiral Choi returned to her seat and picked up her teacup, staring into the amber liquid for a moment before answering. Because we need something to do with all this anger, she said quietly. For 15 years, humanity has been focused on a single goal, making the people who hurt us pay for what they did. Well, mission accomplished. We've captured every devourer. In the galaxy, we've dismantled their entire operation. Soon we'll track down whoever was controlling them, and then we'll have the most powerful military force in galactic history and nothing to fight, Admiral Choi said with a slight smile. Humans don't do well when we're bored, Commander. We tend to find things to fight about. So we decided to give ourselves a different kind of project. She gestured toward the reconstruction displays. Building is more productive than burning. Creating is more satisfying than destroying. Frankly, the galaxy needs some serious infrastructure improvements. Nari was beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had become. They hadn't just built a military force. They had transformed their entire species into something new. Something focused and purposeful and absolutely terrifying in its efficiency. You're not planning to conquer the galaxy, she realized. You're planning to manage it? Someone has to, Admiral Choi said pragmatically. The Devourers have been running wild for decades, while everyone else hid or ran away. That's not sustainable. Someone needs to be responsible for maintaining order and end, making sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. And you've decided that someone is humanity. You've decided that someone is us. Yes, Admiral Choi confirmed. We have the resources, the technology, and the motivation. More importantly, we have the time. This reconstruction project will keep us busy for the next few centuries at least. A chime sounded, and another human officer entered the room. He whispered something to Admiral Choi, who nodded and stood up. I'm afraid our time is up, Commander, she said. We need to get you back to your ship so you can report to your superiors. As they walked toward the door, Admiral Choi paused and turned to face Nari directly. I want you to deliver a message to the Confederation leadership, she said, her voice taking on a formal tone. Tell them that the Devourer threat has been eliminated. Tell them that humanity is now assuming responsibility for galactic security and infrastructure maintenance. Tell them. Admiral Choi's predatory smile returned. Just for a moment. Tell them they're under new management now. We'll send them a bill for services rendered. As Nari was escorted back to her ship, she realized that everything had changed. The galaxy had spent decades living in fear of the Devourers, never realizing that something much more dangerous was quietly building its strength. In an ignored corner of space, humanity hadn't just answered their distress call. They had been waiting for an excuse, any excuse, to reveal what they had become. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but something far more unsettling. Shepherds, caretakers, managers. And as any farmer could tell you, shepherds were always armed. Because sometimes the sheep needed protection, but sometimes the wolves needed to be reminded who was really in charge.